Welcome to the On List. Today's going to be a bit of a shorter video because I want to talk about a fragrance brand that hasn't really been around for all that long. So the brand in particular is Navitus Parfums, and they are what I would call a mastige brand. So it's a portmanteau, in case you haven't heard of it. Mass appeal and prestige smashed together. And it's something that people in the industry, or pundits effectively in industry, have come up with as a way to describe this new class of fragrances that doesn't quite have the artistic and challenging cultural aesthetics of a niche fragrance, which you have a certain expectation of being unique and not mass appealing and sort of more what they call artsy fartsy, right? The l'artisan parfumeur, diptyque, fragrance brands like that, they tend to be, or Sergi Lutens another one, tend to be more in that fragrance is wearable art realm, where, and as of course, you know, with designers like Dior, Chanel, things of that nature, they can be artistic too, but more or less are designed to be friendly to the masses, something that exudes a level of class and a level of quality, but is also friendly on the nose. So the mastige brand category takes the exclusivity and specialness and effectively the price point of niche perfumes and smashes it together with the mass appeal design and thus smell of a typical designer mainstream fragrance. So it's kind of trying to be a best of both worlds. And you see a lot of brands that get labeled as niche that are really more mastige. Brands like Parfums de Marly, brands like Tiziana Terenzi, brands like Amour Oud, not to be confused with Amouage. Amour Oud, that would be more of a mastige brand. Maison Francis Kurkdjian at one point was niche, but is now can be seen as more of a luxury brand slash mastige. So if you're going into a high-end department store like Bergdorf Goodman or Bloomingdale's or Nordstrom, Neiman Marcus, and you see brands that are trying to be like a cut above designers, but still have a designer aesthetic to them, just, you know, more luxurious bottle, more luxurious packaging, but still have that same sort of luxury good feel without going full tilt like Roja Dove does, or Spirit of Dubai, or Royal Crown, where the bottles are like studded with jewels and stuff. That's luxury at, like, that's the furthest end of the spectrum, luxury. I'm talking that somewhere in the middle where it's trying to feel like it's a cut above. That's a mastige fragrance. And Navitus fits right into that. So they formed in 2019. We've already discussed that. They're mastige. We just went over that too. The big thing about this brand, the thing that separates Navitus from the Tiziana Terenzis and the Parfums de Marlys and Initios, Bodacious of the Victorious, those kind of brands, is one, they're not quite as expensive as they are. Those bottles still cross the $300 threshold a lot of times. We're talking sub 200. There is a Navitus line that goes to 250, so they've crossed the threshold recently with a line, but most of their fragrances tend to be just under two, between 125, 150, 195, depending on the line in question, and the size of the bottle also matters. They deliver most of their products at eau de parfum, or what they call parfum extrait or pure parfum. So we're talking in that 20% to 30% realm of oil to alcohol. So they're strong. They are all very gadzooks strong. So I just need to warn you about that. The Navitus fragrances, they don't mess around, okay? So you be careful when you apply them. Now, the thing about them, besides the fact that they sort of undercut the other mastige brands by $100 or so, so that makes them seem like more of a value, effectively, because they're giving you that tier of fragrance for less than some of those other brands will charge you. Their other big claim to fame, the thing that makes them stand out, is the fact that almost everything they do is through an influencer. Now, this is a little different from my previous video where I discussed the Zed creators, and those fragrances through Zaharoff, those are all one and done batches, single batch, limited fragrances that are collaborations with this person or that person. And even though I said in my video for that I found the optics for those a bit on the cheesy side, those are still a bit different because they're not entire fragrance ranges. They're just one and dones, you know, as a way, I guess, of getting X personality or Y personality, their own signature scent that then they can, you know, talk about and wear and things like that. Since, you know, when it all is said and done, everything that Zaharoff does tends to be about signature worthy fragrances that you can wear every day, and those are all limited edition, sort of like bespoke kind of things, which is why they kind of stand outside his regular rank and file line, which are perpetually available at all times. And you know, I had something to say about that too, and you can go watch that video if you want to learn more about that. So Navitus, on the other hand, is a little bit different because they don't just hook up with an influencer or a content creator or a reviewer to do a single one-off fragrance. They put them in charge of an entire range. So they go, okay, you're going to be creative director for this whole line. And a lot of the larger people in the community that have 40, 50, 100,000 plus subs, they get approached by Navitus, and Navitus goes, we're going to let you make 6, 8, 10. Some of them are up to like 12 or more fragrances, depending on the influencer. I think the bigger you are, the bigger the range they give you. I think that's, and I know that's also kind of cheesy to me. That's kind of corny too. It's like, okay, so basically your level of clout determines the size of your line, right? Like, okay, let me go grind some more followers real quick so I can have more fragrances, right? Seems kind of cheesy. But if we can just ignore that for a second, if we can just put a pin in that, like that, and we can look at what the fragrances are. So people like Steven Gavrielatos were one of the earliest. I think he was actually the first to hook up with Navitus. His range is the biggest for that reason. And then people below him, Ashton from Jensen's, had a range. Keyword here is had. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Put a pin in that too. Okay, so he was the second to come out with a range. Then we saw Buck Moore of Big Beard Business. He came out with a range. Money Kicks, I don't know his name. He had like a one fragrance. I think maybe he has 2 now. Then eventually people like Paulina Shar and who else? The guy with Chaos Fragrances. I don't know his name either. I'm sorry. I don't watch your channels, guys. Okay, I have no ill will towards you. I just don't watch your stuff, so I don't really know your names. I don't interact with you. We're not friends, right? So I don't know who you are. I just know the name of your channel or whatever. So again, please don't skewer me for this. This is what I know. So these influencers, these content creators, reviewers, not all, like I say, not all of them are the same. Some of them have different purposes and motives for their channels. You know, some are more objective reviewers, like Steven from Adolescence. He's more of a reviewer. He's not really an influencer. He tries to give a fair shake for the fragrances that he talks about. Other ones are more definitely on the marketing side, different ones. They're pushing a product, but some are more like just critics and such. So Navitus doesn't really discern the difference. So, see, that's the thing, is they don't really see who's an influencer versus who's a content creator versus who's a reviewer. They just go, you have a lot of followers. We want you. They kind of do the Uncle Sam thing. We're like, we want you. They see your followers. They see you interacting with your followers, the size of your platform, and they go, we want you to make a range for us. That's kind of how they work. And that's really unique. There's no one else in the industry right now that I can think of, at least not in that mastige, pseudo-luxury niche realm, that's doing that. That's basically going after influencers and content creators, scooping them up, making them creative directors of their own fragrance range. But there's a catch. The catch is the amount of creative control that these content creators get with making their ranges varies wildly from person to person. Just the same way that their fragrance range size also varies wildly from person to person. And I feel like it depends on what they're asking for. And of course, their clout ends up being the arbiter of what they get. You know, how popular and influential you are depends how much Navitus will bend over for you effectively. So if you're kind of on the smaller side, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of swing with them. They'll let you make a fragrance or two or something, but they're not going to like give you the maestro's wand to make like 15 fragrances. So it's a meritocracy whether you like it or not, guys. That's just the way the range is. So different influencers and content creators will have different opinions of their experience working with Navitus. So you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. Steven seems to enjoy the fragrances that he's co-created with the brand. Ashton from Gensense has famously not really enjoyed his time spent. And I don't want to speak for him. He's got videos you can watch that details his experience. But his range was discontinued. The only range so far of all of these various influencer Navitus collab ranges to be pulled from market. And the reason why it was pulled from market is he couldn't see eye to eye with Navitus over the way they were being created, the way they were being sold, how much he was forced to promote the brand effectively, the contract he signed, all the legalese stuff. Okay, it ended up being an unsavory experience for him, and he wanted to get out. And then legal threats were issued, and Next thing you know, his line was going bye-bye. Although one thing to note about his range, opposed to the other ranges, most of the other Navitus ranges that are directed by, you know, Big Beard or Redolessence or Paula, they all tend to have a very uniform bottle design. Usually a Roja Dove style of clear bottle with a brass cap on top. Very little variation. I think the ones Steven has are smaller. They're 50 ml extras. The ones that Big Beard has are 100 ml and they're eau de parfum. So there's a little bit of variation, but not a lot. However, with the Ashton fragrances, not only did he get a different bottle shape and different design, he also got to name his something different. He got to call them Galleria Parfums. So he was really trying to sort of have his own version of Naughton and Wilson or his own version of Eris perfumes. You see, less abstraits. He was trying to make the range his. And I feel like Navitus didn't want to give him that much control. So ultimately, that bit him in the ass. They wanted more uniformity, which brings me to the way the fragrances smell. That's the big part of this video. You want to know, are these fragrances worth checking out? Well, since I said that it's sort of indeterminate how much involvement these content creators actually get with the brand, most of them just send off briefs, get some mods back, sniff the mods, go, I like this one, I hate this one. That one goes off, becomes the fragrance, and that's it, it's all she wrote. It's kind of bing, bang, boom, here they are. Others have a little more back and forth from what they say, a little more one-on-one with the perfumers individually. Other ones don't even get to speak to the perfumers directly. They just get a go-between, a Navitus, I guess, liaison or something, does all the translation work for them. So it varies wildly. Like I said, person to person, each content creator has a very different relationship with Navitus. So you gotta take it all with a big grain of salt, guys. Okay, you can't be black and white with it. All right. They smell mastige. I mean, my big complaint about the range, and this is no disrespect to Steven or Paula or Big Beard or any other guys. All right. When I close my eyes and sniff them, and I've smelled like 20 of them, okay? And there's a lot of them. That's the scary thing. This range has only been around for 4 years, and they already have so many fragrances on the market. So many. That's red flag number one. How are you, regurgitating so many fragrances so quickly in 4 years? Strike one. Strike two is when I close my eyes, I can't really tell which ones are Big Beard or which ones are Chaos or which ones are Redolessence. I mean, if you took all these fragrances and put them in little tubes and you didn't label them, you put numbers like 1 through 20, shook them up in a bag and had me blind sniff them, I wouldn't know. I mean, I could tell this one is like a BR 540 kind of fragrance. This one is an Aventus kind of fragrance. Oh, this one over here is like a Rose Prick Tom Ford. This one over here is trying to be more like a La Lava Santal 33. Like, I could tell the tropes they're trying to follow. I could tell the general theme, but I couldn't tell you who made what. You know, when my eyes close and I just smell, it almost doesn't even matter who the perfumer is. And that's another strike. Not only does it not seem to matter which content creator was involved? It doesn't really seem to matter which influencer or reviewer was the director for the range. It also doesn't seem to matter who the perfumer is, which is really bad because they're name dropping people like Dominique Ropion, they're name dropping people like Francis Kurjan himself, they're name dropping Julian Rasquinet, George Lee, who's worked with Nichane, Christian Carbonell. These aren't like nobodies, guys. These are like big players in the industry. But the fragrances don't really smell anything like the kind of work you expect from these perfumers. I've not smelled any of these and went, yep, that reminds me of a Kirkjan fragrance, you know, his typical way he plays with materials. This one smells like a George Lee. And I've smelled enough of their fragrances. I can tell when I smell something like Eau de Parfum or Portrait of a Lady, like I can tell those are both Dominique Ropion fragrances. I can tell. He's got a certain way that he plays with materials. He has a certain signature in his fragrances. I know a Ropion when I smell it. Even the older stuff, okay? These, I can't tell. That's the mind blower here. And that's the thing I want to impart to you before I wrap this video up, is that Navitus is a very samey sort of mid-tier, like the people online, the Zoomers. They don't say mediocre anymore. Mediocre is too many syllables now. They just say it's mid. Navitus just smells mid. The whole brand just kind of smells mid, which makes sense because their pricing is also kind of mid, okay? That 125, 150, 195. So it's like their place in the market is kind of mid. The way they smell and they're put together is kind of mid. And they all just sort of melt into each other. You know, the ouds all smell kind of the same. You know, they all smell like your typical Western synth oud stuff. So, and it's just like woody ambers and, you know, fake patchouli isolates, all that stuff. You know, they just don't really have any personality. And again, if you are a content creator who has worked with Navitus and this comes to you like a slap in the face, like, well, I worked very hard on this fragrance, how dare you say it smells mid? Then I'm not disrespecting you, okay? Because I'm sure that if you're happy with the results of your collaboration and that fragrance smells to you the way you want it to, you shouldn't care how I feel anyway. Because if I'm not buying these fragrances, I'm not helping you out anyway. I'm an NPC, right? Like in a video game. I'm just a faceless drone in the background. You can ignore me, okay? I am a nobody, all right? So please just keep it in perspective here, all right? This is just my opinion. One opinion of many, I'm sure. Me not liking your fragrances is not going to really ruin your life. We can still be friends. I'm sure there are many other things we agree on. And I'm not dissing you personally by saying that I don't like the fragrances that you've worked with Navitus to create, because I actually don't feel like it's your fault. I feel like it's Navitus's fault. But you can take it however you want. I can't stop you from being mad. But my thing is, regardless of who the influencer is, regardless of who the perfumers are, they all just kind of smell like this samey, mid-tier, pseudo-luxury. And it's like you could smell the same thing for 35 bucks from some Middle Eastern clone house like Ajmal or Armaf or Latafa or Rasasi. So I wouldn't pay 200 bucks for these. I just go pay 35 to 60 bucks off of eBay or something and then be happy. That's it, guys. That's Navitus in a nutshell. And their CEO is a guy named Hayat Merchant, and he works out of Dubai or the UAE. So he's an investor, guys. He's not even really a perfume guy. He's just sort of investing in this business for another turnaround. So there you have it, guys. That's been Navitus Parfums. Told you it wouldn't be a super long video. Not even going to crack 20 minutes. So you guys have a good one, and hopefully you learned something. Go test them, go sample them, go see for yourself. But I'm just telling you, don't get excited.